Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Recovery Live. We can almost call it our Christmas Eve show, right? Because it's the show
Sure.
before,
Yes.
yes, right?
It's
It's
the
the
one
show,
right before Christmas.
right? The eve of Christmas. So
Closest one to Christmas.
closest one to Christmas.
Well,
Um,
that's not true. The one closest would be the one after, but never mind.
well,
But
right.
yeah,
Well, closest before
yeah.
Christmas.
Christmas Eve.
So I want to welcome Alicia from California.
Raining,
On
raining
outside the
like
first
crazy.
raining. Um,
Virtual
and
retreat.
cold.
Sign up. Virtual. Are you? Is it
Yeah,
raining there where you
It
are?
was raining yesterday. We had like a nor'easter blow through for a couple days, so it rained for a couple days, but no snow, which sometimes can be the case this time of year,
Mm,
especially with the nor'easter coming through in December, right?
yeah.
So, um,
All right. Look at the screen, guys. Virtual retreat, January
yeah,
5th, 7th. Everybody around the world will be at this retreat. And there's a code that you can use before, if you sign up before January 1st, I believe. Use that code, and it's all over socials too. If you forget, you can find it on there.
Mhm.
And UK, Ireland, US, anywhere,
right,
you are welcome to join. You can get recovered even on the computer.
right. And we don't have to sell it as much as we did, a couple years ago because everybody's kind of
Right. They
uh,
know what that is, and some
Zoom,
people might prefer
right.
it.
What do you call it? Zoom. We're all Zoom.
Literate.
Zoom literate, yes, today, where we weren't when we started this. So we tried it and it really did work. And, for a certain population, a lot of people, it's the only way they could do it. It's very convenient right from the couch in your home. If you have little kids or you have some ability, you just can't, you don't have a car, you can't. There's reasons why people
Animals,
just
you don't
can't do
have
it.
people to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great opportunity. It's not quite as long as a regular retreat. It's a few hours Friday night, about a half, 3/4 of a day Saturday, but mostly it's a half. Zoom savvy, Sue Foreman says. Yes, that's it.
That's a
But
good one.
Zoom literate is also a good one. And then a little bit on Sunday. So we'd love for you to join us. It's it's fun. We go into breakout rooms. I mean, everybody knows what they are today, within the Zoom modality, and you get a one-on-one interaction. Yes, everyone does a fifth step one-on-one with someone in a Zoom room. So it can be very much intimate. What I like about it is time is way controlled, right? Because when we want the groups to come back, we just bring them back.
Right. At retreats, like every retreat, actually, yeah, it's usually 5 or 6 minutes late, or
We're whistling and trying to find everybody. Let's go, to come back, right? So
your time is done, break room's done, bam, you're done. Right?
yeah,
Yeah. Too bad we can't do that with regular retreat people.
I know, right?
I mean, we can to a certain extent, but it's way easily controlled on the computer.
It's very controlled on the computer, yeah. So we have the virtual retreat coming up. If you're in the New York area, we have our next mocktail hour on January 17th, which will be down at 34 Prince Street, which we had a meeting about today. It's going to be very exciting. We're going to have a panel of speakers, different panel than we had the first time, obviously, talking about New Year's resolutions and things, and what that's all about, what's a resolution and how do we get to them, and what do you do about it? And maybe some of the panel's experiences with things like that, resolutions. I know making a resolution is one thing, but doing something about it or actually putting it into action can be a whole different ball game. Hence the steps, maybe, if that's your thing. But mocktail hour then we will have retreats going on in California. They're going to be private shelter retreats, but that's activities for us. Just so you guys know, we're out there working with people. We will be in, looks like we're going to be in Leesburg. We got a date set in Leesburg in May. We're going to be in Kips Bay in Manhattan in April. We'll most likely be somewhere in California in May as well, with a regular retreat open for everybody, and then we're just
That'll
going to
be
keep moving along.
Nevada City or somewhere else in May.
Well, believe it or not, Nevada City, the dates they didn't have any open dates for us in May.
So we might change that date then.
Yeah, we're looking into a new venue, at least for this year. We'll be back in Nevada City in November this year. We've moved it into November, so we're going to be there then. But it looks like we're not going to be there in May this year, unless something changes and something cancels. But we're looking around Sacramento. I see Cass had sent a few emails and things right before I got on this about potential new venues. We're looking to see if we can find someplace else around you, Alicea. Maybe you guys need to put up a little boarding house on your property, enough for 30 people, and start having retreats.
We have the room, we just don't have the buildings.
I just don't have the building.
Now that you said that, not at my house, but there's other campgrounds right by Del Oro. I mean, many. Maybe we can find one of those right there in Nevada City.
Yeah, but I remember Val's saying they're really rustic, some of those. I mean, they are kids' camps.
Okay.
And they're camps. And this stood out as clearly the one to use. So that we just can't go to a camp where you have to have sleeping bags and stuff.
That wouldn't work. No.
Even the place we were looking at in Modesto, Stockton, was bring your own bedding, and that can be tough for some people, right?
Especially for people that are flying in. There's not many, but
yeah, I mean, so we're looking, but there'll be something. So we got lots of things going, and we're looking to really get rolling in New York City. And if the Kips Bay goes the way we think, they'll be on some regular basis. And we're also looking to do one out at Notre Dame Church ground, which is St. Joseph's in the Bronx, which is where we'll kind of do the next St. Anthony's, Alicea. So the decision was to, instead of just going to St. Anthony's, which is a little bit limiting because they don't let anyone in. Right. And they can't let anybody else in. If we do it in a little neutral place just a few blocks away, all the guys from St. Anthony's can come, and then others. We can have thumbs from some of the other shelters.
Women too, right?
And women, right. And women. So we can have reach more people, which is good, and get another venue. And that has some places for people to sleep. So it's all good. So it's very exciting what we're doing. Next week, we'll talk about next week. We're going to do book review. Next week, we're going to do the 4 agreements, right?
Yeah.
And we'll pre-game that a little bit for you today, but that'll be the day after Christmas. Alicea and I will be doing that. And then we're off into the New Year's and our New Year's show. I guess it's a secret. We haven't decided yet. Well, Cass knows probably, but it's just to tell us what to do. Right?
I know. She told us what it's on the 9th, but I don't know what's happening on the 2nd unless I missed that email or forgot, which is likely.
Probably put something up. We'll put something up here in a minute that'll show us that.
Yeah. Well, I'm imagining it's going to be about New Year, New You, resolution. We did that last year, I think. And we both said we don't set resolutions. We just set goals as we go. Why wait till January? Yeah. Let's do it now.
Yeah, let's do it now.
Is that a yes to that? Okay, perfect. Yeah. So there's that.
And addiction. Well, today we want to talk a lot about this word called authenticity. Right? Authenticity. What does that mean to us? Not is the painting authentic, but are we authentic? Are we our authentic self? And how do you even know what that is? Right? So we probably should start with, let's take a definition. Let's look up a definition.
Yeah, start with the definition you had from that one book, and then maybe I can just say Brene Brown's definition, and then we can.
Well, let's do the definition from Webster.
Okay.
Just to start way back there. authentic definition.
And not the one that just says authenticity, being authentic.
All right.
What does that mean?
It's like when you look up all, it means all.
Oh, like, well, what if we didn't know what that meant? Then what does it mean?
So, okay, so the Oxford Dictionary, I guess here on the internet here, say Google, says authentic, of undisputed origin, genuine. Okay, that's like speaking to like a document or a painting or something. And then it said, made or done in the traditional original way or in a way that faithfully resembles an original. All right, so that is not.
We could like deduce from that, right? Like truth, real.
So here's this one. It says, in existential philosophy, it says, relating to or denoting an emotionally appropriate, significant, purposive, never heard of that word, and responsible mode of human living, genuine. So authentic, let's see, true to one's own spirit. How about that? True to one's own personality, spirit, or character. So we're going to talk about that because there's some idea that personality may not directly
or be who you are.
Right, be your authentic self. Your personality is certainly how you're interacting with everybody and how you come across. But is it you're coming from true, authentic character? Well, we're going to talk more about it. So that's what the internet says.
Okay, but we have more definitions than that.
Yeah. Let's look at a quick definition out of the Myth of Normal. And then we're going to go back and do we have some other readings out of other books. We're doing so much today.
That Myth of Normal is Gabor Mate, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Gabor Mate, Sue Forman Wiltosa. So here's what authenticity is according to the Myth of Normal. To put it bluntly, authenticity is a quality, right, more often marked than manifested in our culture. Even Coca-Cola is sold as the real thing. We find ourselves surrounded by the random phenomenon of ersatz authenticity, ersatz fake authenticity. Someone is performing realness for the crowd, but it doesn't convince. Maybe the words don't match the cadences, or there's too much defiance and bluster in the delivery. Like this, it says, like its fellow natural state, love, authenticity is not a concept, but something lived, experienced, and basked in. Most of the time, you know it when it's there. I love that. It's authentic. It's not a concept. It's lived, experienced, and basked in. Right?
Mm-hmm. I was reading Sue's comment.
Well, and that's part. So
and I like how you said it's something we feel or we know when we see it. Maybe even if we can't put a name to it. Like if I see a speaker or something, I feel it's when they're vulnerable, that kind of feeling, then that is authentic for me. But that doesn't mean you have to be. Well, do you have to be vulnerable to be authentic? Maybe that's not. You don't. Really depends on what you're talking about.
Right, it would depend, and if it allows you to be a people pleaser and just make sure you're being well liked in some way that's not mostly beneficial, maybe not. Maybe not. Yeah. Maybe it is okay to be. Yeah, right. It's not so easy, like he says. It's not so easy to define. It's not so easy to give it strict and grab a hold of it because of these nuances. That authenticity, right? Who's to say that's not authentic? Being vulnerable is my authentic self, right? So we get into who says what's authentic. If I say this is authentic, is it or isn't it? Who's to say, right?
Yeah. Well, Brene Brown says authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and
Mm-hmm.
embracing who we really are,
Mm-hmm.
which can be kind of scary, right? Because all of us have yucky stuff inside. So are we supposed to just like be that? That's who I am. That's
Mm-hmm.
truth. Or that's, I guess that's exactly the process of the steps, right? And doing step 10. And if judgment and pride or whatever comes up, then do I want to be that way? And then I do step 11, and then we just continually grow into our authenticity.
And then as a tangent here, there's agency. That's the next thing, which would be, you know, adjacent to authenticity. It's agency is the capacity to freely take responsibility for our existence, exercising responsible ability in all essential decisions that affect our lives to every extent possible. To have agency comes from authenticity, right? If you're doing that, exercising responsible ability in all essential decisions to every extent possible, you would have to be working out of the authentic self without any inclination from anybody else. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to act on it. I'm going to have agency. I'm going to be able to do it. I'm going to exercise that ability. Huh. Don't you wish we all could do all this?
Yeah.
It's what was the other one I was going to read? Oh, acceptance 381. That's it. So authenticity, what is it? How do we work and what's the other things you pulled out of Atlas at the Heart, Alicia?
Atlas of the Heart was Brene Brown's book that we talked about months ago. And the part I picked out was I'm responsible for holding you accountable in a respectful and productive way. I am not responsible for your emotional reaction to that accountability. So I chose that because some of us might be like, well, I can't say that because that person's going to get upset, or if this is going to happen if I say that, and I'm walking on eggshells and worried about what they're going to think. People pleasing, codependency. That's not authenticity because I'm not being true to myself. I'm not letting them react or whatever. So that's why I picked that quote.
Mm-hmm.
And underneath it says, it is not fear that stops us, it's avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think that just speaks into, I know I can relate with that I avoid people, I avoid things and call it fear. And I'm not being authentic. I'm not being genuine. I'm not being truthful. I'm believing the lies that I'm telling myself or someone else says, and I'm taking it on. So that feeds all into me, right? Not being authentic.
Right.
Because I'm living into defects of character or anything else.
And if we're worried about someone liking us and we are authentic and then they don't like us, maybe that's the way it was supposed to be. Maybe we're just not supposed to be in relation with that person, friendship,
Right.
whatever it is, work
Which
for them.
is hard, right? But it's
Right.
so true. And we just have to be mature, emotionally mature. Like not everybody's gonna like me. We know it on the other side. I don't like a lot of people. So
Right.
why can't I be on that other side that
Right.
some people just aren't gonna like me?
I mean, we have to love everybody. We can't have ill will, but
Right.
right,
But we
or
don't have to
feel
like
resentful. But
hang out.
we don't have to be in relation. We don't have to be connected to everybody. We just don't. It's just not something that we have to do. But how many times do we do it to be for some societal, cultural, environmental something? And it's always maybe some selfish thing so we don't feel bad or that we get something for it by being in relation to someone. We're getting something that's selfish or self-centered, right? Being around
Which is
somebody
not,
somehow raises us up.
yeah, which is not being
Yeah.
authentic again.
Right.
And I think this so often happens underneath the radar, which we wouldn't even notice. So we have
Right.
to like think about it, which we would do step 10, but some people might not even if they're doing step 10, they might not see it.
right? So we're, more and more we know that we're coded and we're kind of raised in our environment. We were grown up, we were programmed to react certain ways to certain things, very normal because of how we were raised and how it was our survival mechanism and our adaptive skills. So you're right, we may do some things and not even realize, well, I'm being disingenuous when I do this. I'm not being authentic and I'm being people pleasing. We don't know it because it's just what's worked for us. And until we realize that, can be tricky stuff. And that's why I think in many cases you'll hear somebody call themselves a grateful alcoholic, or be grateful because somehow this issue caused us to have to look at ourselves and see some of the stuff that we never would have seen otherwise. I wouldn't have seen that. The way I operate and the way I don't operate are programmed things.
Yeah.
So I think authenticity and identity are closely related, right? What's our identity? Identity isn't what we do. It's what we believe and who we are, what our base core values are, right? It's not what we do. That's what we do. But our identity, if we're walking in our true identity, then we're probably authentic. Being as authentic. You think about that. If we were in our true identity, perfectly authentic, how much peace would that be? Because you wouldn't be fighting all these other things, shuffling around, posturing in every bit of life to get the advantage or get the avoid the disadvantage. Really deep stuff, guys. Sue is on and she gets all this, so it's not too deep for Sue. Sue will go deeper if we let her. Well, it's hard not.
But
not
then
that,
we would just be drooling on.
yeah, it's not. There's nobody lets Sue. She just
Character is true identity and created identity.
I know. Well, and what is it? Are we born with an identity? Does God give us the identity? Right. That's what Living Fearless says. Does He? And it informs our being. What's our identity? What are we? What will we put here to be? What are our essential characteristics like that are who we are? And no matter what we do, if we're not doing that, we're against our identity. It's a created identity. And I think most of us are. I think most of us don't really live into the true identity that we have within us, that I embody. I don't, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think, because immediately as we're raised, we're put in the box of society and things that we have to do. And our identity is stifled or encouraged based upon what we can or can't do and who our parents are and who's around us and this, right?
Right. And then it feeds into our addictions, right? So my identity was tied into what I look like and how skinny I was and all that. So I just went down that road and I got affirmation because I got skinnier and people were noticing. So I just kept going. And so I thought that was my identity, working out and making it my job. But I was miserable and addicted, and that wasn't my identity, even though I thought it was.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing too, is what is our identity? How do we know? Because it's still programmed. It's just such deep stuff. Like what we think we are. Is our identity just what we like? What we like to do, what would make us the happiest? Does that say that's our identity? Is the things that we do that would make us the happiest? And discernment needed, right? Needed here on this. So how do we determine what our true identity is? Living Fearless has some exercises to go through to try to help you figure out what your identity is. So that's an interesting book, guys, and we've reviewed that before, not in its entirety, but it's one to read if you're thinking about how to determine your identity. And I'm sure there's a million other books that would help.
Yeah. And it goes into your false self a lot, right? And it says fear, doubt, shame tries to hinder our true self. False beliefs and all those things that are very strong and they feel real and valid, but that's not God's given identity to us.
And then the down on Atomic Habits quote, quality of our lives depends on the quality of our habits. So what habits have we put into play that have so much effect on the quality of our life? And why? Why have we created these habits or no habits? And how do they fit into our identity? And do these habits feed our authenticity or do they not? Do they help us to become more authentic by a discipline that allows us to be freed from fear or shame or control, right? Or manipulation? Hard to say. Well, maybe not hard to say, hard to do.
Right. Well, quality of our habits for us and others in the 12-step world, that would be step 10 and 11 and 12, I believe would be the biggest, keeping spiritually fit.
Mm-hmm.
In Atomic Habits, when he was talking about lagging measure, is you get what you repeat. So your health is a measure of your eating habits. Your clutter is a measure of your cleanliness habits. And I would add your spiritual fitness is resulting from, are you doing 10, 11, and 12?
Mm-hmm.
Period. And that's what we teach on the last day of our retreats and hone it in. Like, you're not done today at noon.
Right.
You need to keep growing, keep going. Ask other people, try something. You don't like it, pivot, keep going. You're never done. And if something's off, do a step 10 and find it and figure it out. Which is hard because a lot of people aren't used to looking at themselves and being completely honest and authentic because we've been in our addictions and hiding for decades.
And decades. Right.
That sometimes we need to go to counseling or read a book or go to more meetings or, and I think that's okay.
Right. It's true. We've got this life that's going along a certain way and things that aren't working well for us. Maybe we're late for everything. Stuff is dirty. We got whatever issues we have, and we don't feel like we have time for anything. We don't read. We're not exercising. We feel unhealthy and we don't know why. And then we begin this 12-step program, which starts us in identifying what isn't working in our lives. And then we start looking at the habits we have. Like he says, what we repeat, we get. And then decide I don't want to be that way anymore. Let's create new habits. How do I, being late is all of a sudden become a problem. I identified it in step 4, right? Told somebody in step 5, now made some amends about it. And now I got to live in step 10, asking God for the power to walk in this new freedom. And we start creating new habits. But it can work just like that, right? Like you're saying, we don't know what habits we've been walking in until we're identified. Some things that have been pets our whole lives, we think we need, and they're good for us, right? And we can't live without anyway. We can't live without this, whatever. And then all of a sudden we realize it's not working for us and we start making some changes. And good habits, boy, are they like catch fire, right? You do a change of some little habit and you see how good it is. It makes me want to do more.
Exactly. And then you provide evidence for yourself.
Right.
And then you do it more. And it's action, right? You can't just think your way into it. You need to take action, and then the thoughts and the feelings would follow.
Right. And it doesn't have to be extreme. If you can't get up and you don't have time in the morning, you set it for 1 minute earlier for a week, then 2 minutes earlier. Because most of us can do that. What can you do?
Exactly.
Today that'll lead you to do what you can't do tomorrow. That's the tongue twister.
Yeah.
Right? I want to get up 20 minutes earlier. I can't do that tomorrow, but I can do 1 minute. But if I do 1 minute each day for a couple of weeks, it will lead to the 20 minutes. And we start creating habits like that. And those are doable. We can chew those off at little by little.
But talking about this and people listening and like, yeah. And then they stop. Because I work with people. They're saying, yeah, but they're not doing it. Either they think just making excuses, but 2, they'll think, well, it needs to be bigger. So they're going from not exercising, eating garbage, doing nothing to I'm gonna be no sugar, exercise 7 days a week, and and that's not gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
You need to do a baby step and then get that down, and then that's a habit, and then go to another one, because so many people just aim over here. And if we're completely honest, how's that working for you?
Yeah, right.
It is not. There's so many people I see at the gym. I've lived in this area for 2.5 years now, and nothing's changing. Nothing. Nothing. And they keep saying, making these big goals, and it's been 2.5 years. Don't get me started. I'll stop.
Well, I mean, and we can overlay it into spiritual life, and they're working of their step 10, and they're walking into the promises of the program. We see a lot of success because I think that we give some practical advice on how to do it, and we give it some easy ways. And we know that people that do their 10, 11, and 12 every day tend to be more stable and tend to show some signs of growth in whatever area it is, and tend to walk into the promises more. So you're right. It's about a discipline. It's about doing it. It's about seeing the benefit and then walking into it. I know spiritually too, I see people that don't grow, or they don't seem to be growing, or I don't see them growing. I mean, we never know for sure. But yeah, the gym is a terrible place to watch people not do anything
Yeah.
for years. When I worked there, Alicia, I worked in it, and yeah, 9 out of 10. Well, maybe not 9, 8 fully. 2 years later, if you saw them, you wouldn't notice any difference than 2 years before. And so are they healthier? I don't know. Is the inside changed? I mean, certainly maybe they didn't get worse. I mean, I don't want to rain on the whole parade of the whole thing, but so what's the benefit of it, right? Are we just walking through habits that aren't, and not using them smartly, right? It's about what's the goal at the end of this. I don't want to do anything without it having some sort of a goal that is measurable, right? What do they say? What it's not measured isn't attained.
Well, what's measured is monitored. You need to monitor it, and
Right.
if you're measuring it, you're going to be looking at it.
Right.
If you're not measuring it, then you're like, oh, I'll be fine. And then 2.5 years later, you weigh more and you're more unhealthy because you're not monitoring it and measuring it and looking at it. Even with relationships. I mean, it doesn't have to be weight, and because we're always on health, weight, and nutrition, which I think is important. The body is a temple, and it could be relationships. Is my marriage getting better, or is it in the toilet? And monitor, measure, talk to your spouse, meet quarterly. How are you feeling about this, and then meet again? Is it getting better? If you don't look at it, it's easy to be like, and then you're 10 years later, and it's, But again, it's hard. It's uncomfortable to have those conversations. But I think if we're honest and authentic, we will be having these conversations with our family and whoever is appropriate to have them with. Mm-hmm. And then what they do with it, we can't control that. But
dials us right back into a wonderful way to start, especially if you're in some sort of substance use disorder or brokenness from addiction, is that the 12 steps may offer you a way to get started on this, because it gives you that roadmap to start figuring it out. And then, people could go all different ways. And then you start reading all these books that we're reading that end up helping in that and helping us learn what is authentic. Like the 12 steps don't say be authentic, but down the road you realize, well, that's actually what it's trying to make us do. It's helping us be more of the person that we're supposed to be, and walk into our gifts and our talents and our abilities, and be free from the things that cause us stress and anxiety. And so that would have to be our authentic self, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, the steps don't say authentic, right? But it talks about love and purity and honesty, which is leading to authenticity.
Right. And certainly stress-free. life, or a life free of
Worry,
agitation
anxiety,
and worry, right, and anxiety and depression, and
serenity.
and it can free us from manipulating everybody around us and everything we're talking about, people pleasing and all. Uh, it'd be a great place to be in if we, but we have so many things working against us. Everyone does today, or working, maybe not against us, but working on us, pressing us, right? Because we could make the case that we only have so much freedom to be our authentic self. What if your authentic self was something, I don't know, that doesn't fit in the economic cultural norm today, and you'd be homeless or something because you got to make money, and your authentic self wouldn't make you a lot of money or whatever. There's these things that our society, what is it? Modern society is the killer of artistic.
Right. Well, but then you could do baby steps. You could find people and move to a state where, like, not California or New York, move somewhere where the cost of living is lower, find 10 people and get a place together, a commune or whatever. I mean, you could do that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so, right, it is possible, but we are pressed against things as we grow up. We have to go to this school because that's where they tell us to go, and we didn't have any choice generally when we're younger than your high school. This schooling says that leads you to this, which leads you to the ability to make money, because without money, you can't have just the essential things in life. And we may or may not be able to do what we, our authentic self is because of where we live. You live in Manhattan, you can't have a job that pays $30,000 a year. Even if that's your true authentic self, you'd be on the street, right? If you're in Sogogi, Oklahoma, you might be able to. So I was raised here, and who knows that you can get over there? All this stuff, it gets to be mind-boggling, right?
Right.
And it's in some ways, maybe it's not worse, I guess, because once you start realizing all this stuff, then you're like, what? Right? Maybe ignorance is bliss. So I think that I have to.
Well, it's true, but that could be a bad thing or it could be a good thing, right? Because the more that I get into the Bible and the steps and learning, the more I see that I don't know. And the more I have to work on myself, like, whoa, which I love, but sometimes it's exhausting.
Right.
And people that aren't used to that might be like, no, thank you.
Right.
But we need to start with ourselves. Actually, that's where we have to be, not blaming others, looking at others. Well, they do this and that. We can't control them. We have to look at ourselves. Am I being authentic? I'm being triggered. Why? It's me. It's in me. I need to look at that, which leads into what we're going to talk about next week with 4 agreements, which are: be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best, which I think would all lead to authenticity. But we'll talk about more in that book next week.
Yeah. And the underlying thing with that is 4 agreements is to break the agreements we do have with each other, with ourselves.
That we've grown up with.
So the essence of the book, which we'll talk about next week, is that we have these agreements within us. It's this rule of law, it calls it, in us, which is we've determined these agreements based upon our upbringing, raising, what's worked or hasn't worked for us, and what we've needed to do to adapt and survive. And what we're actually doing with these 4 agreements is making 4 new agreements that are these 4 things. And how would your life look if you were able to hold to these 4 perfectly, which I don't know if anybody can.
Possible, but it's something to aim for, right? We aim for that.
Same thing.
We can't
the 4 absolutes. We say absolute honesty, unselfishness, purity, and love. We don't say that we can do it, but we say that's where we're aiming. We wake up every day and say, let me be as honest, as unselfish, pure in my motive, and as loving as I can be today. I mean, I say that. And then off you go, and the day starts. But I mean, we're set. Those are agreements I try to make with myself, but that's for next week.
Well,
But
that's reminding me of our fourth step inventory sheet is the left side and then the right side. We're aiming for the right
right,
side, but we're not going to always be on that right side. Sometimes we are fearful and procrastinate and get lazy and are jealous, but that's what step 10 is for. And then we pray about it. What can I do about it? God, can you please remove it? And I'll do this and you do that about it. And because we have to do, sometimes we have to do something about it too, like control our thoughts, redirect our thoughts. It's not that God is just going to magically take them away. He could, but most likely he wants us to work on ourselves and do something. Not just sit there
yeah,
and think he's going to do it all for us, because he's not.
right. Um, this growing thing, right? This is self-improvement, this identifying who we are. It's such a fun process it is for me, looking through it when I do it and do it right. Becoming authentic, working towards the right side of the sheet. You're right. And one of the things that we're pretty strong about at retreats is telling people that you're not going to be perfect when you leave here, but you're going to have a system to work towards being as perfect as you can be. And as you're working that system, you can be in a state called recovered. You are not being obsessed with that thing that had you broken while you're growing and continuing to live a life that is more and more and more defined. And it's a very important concept for us. And it was for them back at the beginning to say, there's a turning place. We can start today and I can say I'm recovered and then live in it. And the quality of that recovered and the level at which we receive the promises and the way our life goes forward, it depends upon how well we work the steps. Well, 10, 11, 12.
You told me yesterday about the fifth
Mm-hmm.
agreement. I think he has 3 books in that trilogy, maybe, and I have them back there somewhere. But I only read the four agreements one.
Well, we have the 4 agreements for next week. Maybe we ought to look and add it, say there's a 5th one. You'll have to tune in next week after Christmas and see if we talk about the 5th one, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
what else can we say about authenticity, truth?
Well, we said it all, and we're getting ready to head into Christmas, and I think sometimes we're all pushed in all sorts of directions on the holidays, and we're all forced into this and that based on commercialism and materialism, and we have to do because this is what society says. Christmas is a tough time of year sometimes. I've often thought it's not all that joyful sometimes. When you go to the store and everybody's rushing and everybody's crowded and everything. That's Scroogey Tom, I know. But we just wish that everybody, and hope and pray that everybody has a peaceful, joyful Christmas. See some family. Try to be true to yourself, and maybe have a little contemplation on if you're being authentic and you're living into your true identity, and maybe there'd be something that you'd want to do. And even if you're not an addict, come to our virtual retreat. These process can help anybody to start on a path to recovery and healing and restoration. And the steps started me on learning and then reading all these books that we read and learning all this stuff that we're learning. So we started somewhere, and for me, it was started with that, by breaking it. But maybe that would be you. But we do want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. If Christmas is not your celebrated thing, this is the holiday season. We want to say Happy Holidays. I'm off to Raleigh, North Carolina for a few days. Alicia, you'll be in Auburn, right?
In Auburn. My mom is coming in town from Las Vegas, and my oldest son is coming in from Southern California. They'll be here for 4 nights. So that'll be good because I've never had them around for Christmas, actually.
And what's our code? Patience and tolerance.
Yeah. Being authentic, speaking love, having boundaries,
right?
And,
Don't make assumptions. Don't take anything personal, right? Work in those agreements.
right. Don't make
Right.
assumptions. Have
Mm-hmm.
mature conversations when needed. And I'm not responsible for how people react. Just not.
It's a hard thing
That's
to
hard.
walk through.
But I'm not responsible for how someone else is feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to speak in love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can make amends if I kind of overstep or get out of line.
So that's what you can do.
Yeah, that's my part.
Keeps you straight. All right, great, everybody. Well, another great show. We'd love to hear any comments. We do monitor this thing throughout the week and see other comments and input. We'll be back next week again. We're going to be talking about the 4 agreements. A lot of it would be some of the stuff we talked about today, but a little more focused next week, day after Christmas. Once again, we want to wish everybody just a happy holidays and a Merry Christmas if Christmas is what you celebrate. And we'll see you next week for the 26th right here on Recovery Live at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, and 6 p.m. if you're over in the UK. So everybody have a great rest of your week and Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Bye.